Princess Zara stood on the crystal balcony of the royal palace, watching the massive human warships descend through the crimson atmosphere of her homeworld. The sight should have filled her with terror, but instead, she felt a strange mix of curiosity and something she couldn't quite name. The war that had raged for 3 years between the Altarian Empire and the human coalition was finally over. And somehow, impossibly, the humans had won. The communication from the human fleet commander had been brief and formal. They demanded an immediate surrender ceremony with the royal family present. Her father, Emperor Corvin, had no choice but to comply. The once mighty Altarian fleet lay in ruins around the orbital stations, and their ground forces had been systematically defeated on 17 different worlds. Zara's younger brother, Prince Dex, burst into her chambers without ceremony. His usually pristine blue skin was pale with worry, and his ceremonial robes hung awkwardly on his thin frame. At only 16 cycles old, he had never seen their empire face defeat. "Sister, Father wants us in the throne room immediately. The human delegation is already here." His voice cracked with barely contained fear. "They say their commander is someone called Marcus Chen. Intelligence reports suggest he's the one who led the assault on the Kepler defense grid." The name meant nothing to Zara, but the Kepler assault had been a turning point in the war. The humans had somehow penetrated their most advanced defensive system, using tactics that defied all military logic. What should have been an impregnable fortress fell in less than 6 hours. As they walked through the marble corridors toward the throne room, Zara noticed how quiet the palace had become. Most of the servants had fled when news of the human advance reached the capital. Only the most loyal guards remained, though their weapons had been surrendered as part of the ceasefire agreement. The throne room doors, carved from single pieces of meteorite and inlaid with precious metals from across the empire, stood open. Emperor Corvin sat rigidly on the throne of stars, his expression carefully neutral. The room that usually hosted grand celebrations and diplomatic ceremonies now felt cold and empty. 3 humans stood in the center of the chamber, their military uniforms a stark contrast to the ornate Altarian architecture around them. They were smaller than most Altarians, but something about their bearing suggested they were far from helpless. The one in the center, presumably their commander, kept his helmet on despite being indoors. "Your Imperial Majesty," the lead human spoke through a translation device, his voice mechanical and emotionless. "I am Commander Marcus Chen of the Terran Coalition Forces. We are here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Emperor Corvin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Commander Chen, while I acknowledge our current circumstances, I would prefer to conduct these negotiations with proper diplomatic protocol. Perhaps your delegation would honor us by removing your helmets, as is customary in our court." The commander hesitated for a moment, then reached up and pulled off his helmet. Zara felt the world shift beneath her feet. The face that emerged was older than she remembered, marked by 3 years of war but unmistakably familiar. The same brown eyes, the same slightly crooked smile that had once made her laugh during stolen moments in the palace gardens. "Hello, Zara," Marcus said softly, his words barely audible in the vast throne room. Memories flooded back with stunning clarity. Marcus as a young exchange student from Earth, part of a cultural program that had existed during the brief period of peace between their species. He had been assigned to study Altarian history and language at the Royal Academy. She remembered teaching him to navigate the complex etiquette of court life, sharing meals in the garden pavilion, and long conversations about their different worlds. She remembered the day he had to leave suddenly when tensions between their governments escalated. He had promised to find a way back to her, but she had never expected it would be like this. "You know this human?" Emperor Corvin's voice cut through her shock like a blade. "Father, this is," Zara began, then stopped. How could she explain that the enemy commander had once been her closest friend, that during those peaceful months, she had begun to develop feelings she wasn't supposed to have for an alien? "We met during the cultural exchange program years ago." The emperor's expression darkened. Political alliances and royal marriages were tools of state power, not matters of personal choice. The idea that his daughter might have formed an attachment to a human, especially one now responsible for their defeat, was beyond scandalous. Marcus stepped forward slightly, his posture formal but his eyes never leaving Zara's face. "Your Majesty, if I may, the princess was instrumental in helping me understand Altarian culture during my time here. Her assistance was invaluable." The careful phrasing didn't fool anyone in the room. Zara could see her father calculating the political implications, while her brother stared in open shock. This was a complication none of them had anticipated. "Commander Chen," the Emperor said with forced calm, "perhaps we should proceed with the surrender terms. I assume you have specific demands regarding our military assets and territorial concessions." "Actually, Your Majesty, the situation is more complex than a simple surrender." Marcus gestured to one of his companions, who produced a data tablet. "The Coalition has been monitoring Altarian space for some time. We've detected unusual energy readings from the Vorthon Nebula sector, patterns that don't match any known natural phenomena." Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the throne room's temperature. The Vorthon Nebula was considered cursed space by most Altarians. Ships that entered the region either never returned or came back with their crews speaking of impossible visions and mechanical failures that made no sense. "What are you suggesting?" Emperor Corvin asked. "We believe something else is out there, Your Majesty. Something that poses a threat to both our species." Marcus's expression grew grave. "The war between us may have been orchestrated by a third party. We've found evidence of technological interference in our communications networks, subtle manipulations that encouraged mistrust and conflict." The throne room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Marcus was right, then the devastating war that had cost millions of lives on both sides might have been nothing more than a distraction, a way to weaken both the Altarian Empire and the human coalition, while some unknown enemy prepared for a larger assault. Zara found herself studying Marcus's face, looking for the young man she had once known beneath the hardened commander's exterior. The evidence he presented was disturbing, but part of her wondered if this was simply an elaborate human deception designed to maintain control over Altarian space. "Why should we believe you?" she asked, surprising everyone, including herself. Marcus turned to face her directly. "Because tomorrow we're going to find out together." The emergency council meeting convened at dawn in the war chamber beneath the palace. Emperor Corvin had reluctantly agreed to Marcus's proposal for a joint investigation, though his trust remained fragile. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the contested territory where both Altarian and human forces had suffered mysterious equipment failures over the past year. Zara sat beside her father, acutely aware of Marcus's presence across the circular table. The other human officers seemed competent but ordinary. It was Marcus who commanded attention whenever he spoke, and she found herself remembering why she had been drawn to him during those peaceful months years ago. The pattern became clear about 6 months ago, Marcus explained, manipulating the holographic display to highlight specific incidents. Ships from both our fleets would enter these coordinates and experience identical malfunctions. Navigation systems would display impossible readings, weapons would misfire, and crew members would report hallucinations. Admiral Thorne, the Emperor's military advisor, leaned forward skeptically. "Commander Chen, you're suggesting that some unknown force has been manipulating both our fleets. But why reveal this information now? What do you gain from our cooperation?" Marcus exchanged glances with his senior officer, Captain Rodriguez, before answering. "Because 3 days ago, we lost contact with the exploration vessel Endeavor near the Vorthon Nebula. The last transmission was unusual. The holographic display shifted to show a recording of the bridge of a human starship. The image quality was poor, filled with static and interference patterns. A young human officer was speaking urgently into the communication system, but his words were difficult to understand through the distortion. "The stars are wrong," the officer was saying, his voice thick with panic. "The constellations don't match any known configuration. We're receiving signals from everywhere and nowhere. They're trying to tell us something, but we can't understand the language." The transmission dissolved into static, then cut off entirely. The silence in the war chamber was profound. Prince Deck spoke first, his voice shaky. "What happened to them?" "We don't know," Captain Rodriguez answered honestly. "But we've detected similar energy signatures, around 3 Altarian vessels that disappeared in the same region over the past 2 years. Emperor Corvin stood abruptly and paced to the massive window overlooking the capital city. "You're asking us to risk more ships and crew members based on speculation and fear." "Father," Zara said carefully, "what if Commander Chen is right? What if this threat is real?" The Emperor turned to study his daughter's face. "And what if this is an elaborate human deception designed to gain access to our most sensitive military installations? The Vorthon region contains some of our most advanced research facilities. Marcus removed a data crystal from his uniform and placed it on the table. Your Majesty, this contains complete intelligence files on the phenomena we've observed. Our scientists' analyses, the full communication logs, even theoretical explanations for what we might be facing. If this were a deception, we wouldn't be sharing our most classified information. Admiral Thorne activated the crystal with his personal authorization codes. Data flowed across multiple screens around the chamber, showing technical readouts that made little sense to anyone without advanced training in quantum physics or xenobiology. These energy patterns, the Admiral muttered, studying the displays. They're similar to theoretical models our scientists developed years ago for stable wormhole technology. But the power requirements would be enormous. Our physicists reached similar conclusions, Captain Rodriguez confirmed. Whatever is generating these effects has access to technology that surpasses both our civilizations by several centuries. Zara stood and moved closer to the holographic display, studying the data with growing concern. Her education had included extensive training in strategic analysis and threat assessment, skills that were often overlooked because of her gender but which had always fascinated her. The timing, she said suddenly. Look at the timeline of incidents. They began appearing just months before our first border conflicts escalated into full warfare. Marcus nodded approvingly. You spotted it too. Every major engagement between our forces was preceded by one of these mysterious incidents in nearby space. Almost as if something was studying our military capabilities and tactics. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. If an unknown force had been observing and possibly manipulating both civilizations, then the war itself might have been nothing more than an elaborate test or distraction. Emperor Corvin returned to his chair, his expression grim. Assuming for the moment that your theory is correct, Commander Chen, what exactly are you proposing? A joint expedition to the Vorthan Nebula, Marcus replied without hesitation. Combined crews, shared resources, and complete transparency between our forces. We need to find out what happened to our missing ships and whether this unknown presence poses an immediate threat to both our worlds. Absolutely not, Admiral Thorne interjected. Your Majesty, we cannot risk our people or our technology on such an uncertain mission, especially in cooperation with forces that were our enemies mere days ago. Zara felt a flash of frustration with the Admiral's narrow thinking. Admiral, if Commander Chen is right, then our choice isn't between cooperation and independence. It's between working together or facing an unknown threat while still weakened from 3 years of warfare. The princess makes an excellent point, Marcus said, and Zara caught the slight smile that crossed his face. Our projections suggest that both our civilizations will need at least 5 years to fully recover from the war. If this unknown force decides to act before then, neither of us would be prepared for a serious confrontation. Emperor Corvin was quiet for several minutes, weighing possibilities and consequences. Finally, he spoke with the measured tone that had guided the Empire through countless crises. Commander Chen, I will consider your proposal under specific conditions. The expedition will include equal representation from both our forces, but command authority will rotate based on expertise rather than military rank. Our scientists will have full access to any discoveries, and any technology recovered will be shared equally. Agreed. Your Majesty? Marcus replied immediately. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, my daughter will accompany the expedition as the official Altarian representative. Her diplomatic training and strategic analysis skills will be valuable, and her presence will demonstrate our commitment to this cooperation. Zara felt her heart race at the announcement. She had hoped for a chance to learn more about the mysterious threat, but she hadn't expected to be personally involved in the investigation. The opportunity to work alongside Marcus again filled her with both excitement and apprehension. Marcus looked surprised but pleased. The princess's participation would be an honor for our mission. Admiral Thorne looked alarmed. Your Majesty, surely the risks are necessary, the Emperor cut him off firmly. If we're trusting human forces with our most sensitive intelligence, then we must demonstrate equal commitment to this alliance. As the meeting adjourned and preparations began for the joint expedition, Zara found herself wondering if her father's decision had been based purely on political considerations, or if he suspected the deeper connection between herself and Marcus. Either way, she was about to embark on the most dangerous mission of her life alongside the one person in the galaxy who might understand both her hopes and her fears. The Investigation that would begin tomorrow might reveal the truth about the mysterious threat facing both their civilizations. But Zara suspected it would also reveal truths about herself that she wasn't entirely prepared to face. The joint expedition ship Harmony represented the most advanced technology both civilizations could offer. Half the vessel utilized human engineering with its efficient fusion reactors and adaptive armor plating, while the other half showcased Altarian innovations including quantum navigation systems and crystalline energy conduits. The two sections had been connected by neutral zones designed by both species working together. Zara stood in the observation deck, watching the Vorthon Nebula grow larger through the reinforced viewport. The swirling clouds of gas and cosmic dust created patterns that seemed almost intentional, as if some intelligence was arranging the stellar matter into meaningful shapes. She had been studying the region for 3 days since they departed, but the more data she reviewed, the less sense it made. The gravitational readings are impossible, Dr. Sarah Kim, the expedition's lead physicist said as she joined Zara at the viewport. The human scientist had quickly become one of Zara's favorite crew members due to her direct communication style and brilliant analytical mind. According to our instruments, there are mass concentrations in areas where we can see nothing but empty space. Our quantum sensors detect similar anomalies, added Dr. Vex, Zara's Altarian counterpart in the science division. His blue-scaled face showed the same confusion that had plagued the entire research team. The energy patterns suggest artificial manipulation of space-time, but the power requirements would exceed the total output of both our home systems combined. Zara nodded thoughtfully. What if we're not looking at technology as we understand it? What if this intelligence has found ways to manipulate reality that don't require massive energy expenditure? The ship's intercom crackled to life with Marcus's voice. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We're approaching the last known coordinates of the missing vessels. The bridge of the Harmony was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Human and Altarian control systems had been integrated so seamlessly that crew members from both species could operate any station. Marcus stood at the central command position, his attention focused on the main display showing their immediate surroundings. Report, Zara said as she took her position as diplomatic liaison. We're picking up debris fields from at least 4 different vessels, Captain Rodriguez announced from the tactical station. The metal signatures match both human and Altarian hull compositions, but the damage patterns don't correspond to any known weapons. Marcus manipulated the display to show a closer view of the debris. The twisted metal fragments seemed to have been stretched and compressed in ways that defied physics. Some pieces appeared to have been turned inside out, while others showed crystalline formations that shouldn't have been possible with standard ship alloys. Commander, Lieutenant Torres called from communications. We're receiving a transmission from somewhere within the nebula. It's not using any standard communication protocol, but our translation algorithms are picking up fragments of meaning. Put it through speakers, Marcus ordered. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything any of them had heard before. It began as a low harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate through the ship's hull, then gradually evolved into something that might have been a voice speaking in mathematical concepts rather than words. Help. Trapped. Between. Wrong dimensions. They made us test subjects. For the crossing. Dr. Kim was frantically adjusting her instruments. The signal is coming from multiple directions simultaneously. It's as if the source is spread across several different spatial coordinates. Can we respond? Zara asked. Unknown, Lieutenant Torres replied. The transmission method is completely foreign to our technology. Marcus made a command decision. Take us deeper into the nebula. Follow the signal to its source but maintain full defensive protocols. As the Harmony moved forward, the space around them began to change in disturbing ways. Stars that should have been visible through the cosmic dust disappeared and reappeared in different positions. The ship's navigation systems started displaying contradictory information, showing their location as simultaneously near their starting point and deep within unmapped space. Commander, Dr. Vex called urgently from his station. Our quantum sensors are detecting multiple parallel versions of this ship existing in the same location. According to these readings, there are at least 7 different versions of the Harmony occupying this exact position. The crew exchanged worried glances. The implications were terrifying. If multiple versions of their ship existed simultaneously, What had happened to the crews of the other versions? Suddenly, the transmission changed. The mathematical harmonics shifted into something resembling actual speech, though the words seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "You should not have come here," the voice said with unmistakable sadness. "They use this place to study how different realities connect. Every ship that enters becomes part of their experiment. We have been trying to warn others for time that has no meaning here." Marcus stepped forward. "Who are they? What do they want?" "Beings from spaces between realities. They seek to understand how consciousness works across different dimensions. Your war, they caused it to see how conflict affects the development of awareness. Now they prepare for larger tests." Zara felt ice form in her stomach. "What kind of larger tests?" "They will cause wars between entire galactic clusters. Billions of lives destroyed to satisfy their curiosity about how suffering shapes evolution. You must escape this place and warn others." The ship suddenly shuddered as if something massive had collided with it, though sensors showed nothing nearby. Emergency lights activated throughout the bridge, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "Hull breach in Section 7, reported Chief Engineer Martinez. "But the breach appears to be inside out. The hull is intact, but atmosphere is somehow flowing into space through solid metal." Marcus turned to his crew with grim determination. "All hands prepare for emergency maneuvers. We're getting out of here now." But as he reached for the navigation controls, the space around them shifted again. Through the main viewport, they could see another version of the Harmony floating nearby, its hull dark and lifeless. Through its transparent sections, they could make out the silhouettes of crew members who appeared to be moving in slow motion, as if time itself moved differently for them. "My God," whispered Captain Rodriguez. "That's us. That's another version of our ship." Zara watched in horror as the other version of herself appeared on that ship's bridge, looking directly back at them with an expression of desperate warning. The other Zara was trying to communicate something, gesturing frantically at something beyond their field of view. Then, from the depths of the nebula, something began to emerge. It was not a ship as they understood the concept, but rather a structure that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously. Parts of it appeared solid, while other sections flickered between existence and nothingness. It was beautiful and terrifying, clearly the product of an intelligence far beyond their comprehension. "They're here," the transmission whispered directly into their minds. "The architects of reality. They want to meet the ones who managed to end their test war early. You have impressed them. And they have questions about human determination and Altarian adaptability." Marcus grabbed Zara's hand instinctively as the alien presence approached their ship. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we face this together." The approaching vessel began to emit pulses of energy that seemed to scan not just their ship, but their thoughts and memories. Zara could feel a vast intelligence touching her mind, examining her experiences with the gentle curiosity of a scientist studying an interesting specimen. The real test was just beginning. The alien presence filled their minds like warm water flowing into empty vessels. Zara found herself experiencing memories that weren't her own, seeing the galaxy from perspectives that spanned millions of years. The architects of reality, as they called themselves, communicated through shared experiences rather than words. She saw the birth of stars being carefully guided to create specific gravitational patterns. She witnessed the subtle manipulation of evolutionary processes on countless worlds, all designed to produce consciousness that could perceive reality from different dimensional perspectives. The scope of their influence was staggering. They had been orchestrating the development of intelligent life across the galaxy for eons. "Do not fear," a voice that wasn't quite a voice spoke, within their collective consciousness. "We mean no harm to your species. We are simply curious." Marcus struggled to maintain his sense of self as the alien intelligence explored his memories of the war. "Curious enough to cause the deaths of millions? Your species develop most rapidly under pressure," the entity explained with something resembling regret. "Conflict forces innovation, cooperation, and growth in ways that peace cannot achieve. We accelerated a war that would have occurred naturally within 50 of your years." Zara felt anger rising despite the overwhelming presence in her mind. "You had no right to make that choice for us. Rights are concepts created by limited beings who perceive time linearly," the entity responded. "We exist across all possible timelines simultaneously. From our perspective, Every choice has already been made and unmade countless times. Dr. Kim's voice came through the mental connection, strained but defiant. If you exist across all timelines, then you know how this encounter ends. Why bother with explanations? Because in some timelines you surprise us. In some versions of this meeting, your species demonstrate capabilities that we did not predict. These anomalies are precious to us. They represent true innovation in the fabric of reality. The ship around them began to phase in and out of normal space as the architect's vessel established a more stable connection. Through the viewports, the crew could see multiple versions of their reality existing simultaneously. In some versions, the war between humans and Altarians had never ended. In others, both civilizations had been completely destroyed. Show us the timeline where our people survive, Marcus demanded. Survival is not the correct term, the entity replied. Evolution, transcendence, integration, these are more accurate descriptions of what awaits the successful timelines. Suddenly, they were experiencing a vision together. The crew of the Harmony found themselves standing in what appeared to be a vast library, containing the collected knowledge of millions of civilizations. Beings of various species moved between towering shelves filled with crystalline storage devices, each one containing the complete history and wisdom of an entire world. This is what awaits those who pass our tests, the entity explained. Integration into the galactic community of transcended species. Your war was the final examination for both humans and Altarians. Your cooperation in ending the conflict early demonstrates that both species are ready for advancement. Prince Dex, who had insisted on joining the expedition despite his youth, stepped forward in the vision. What about those who don't pass your tests? They continue existing in their current state until they develop the necessary wisdom, or until their civilizations collapse under the weight of their own limitations. We do not destroy, we simply observe and occasionally guide. Zara found herself thinking of all the suffering the war had caused. The people who died because of your manipulation, what happens to them? Death is another limited concept, the entity responded, and suddenly the crew could perceive the deceased as energy patterns that persisted beyond physical destruction. Consciousness is conserved across dimensional boundaries. Those who died contributing to the advancement of their species become part of the integrated knowledge matrix. That doesn't bring them back to their families, Marcus said bitterly. No, the entity acknowledged, but it gives their sacrifice meaning beyond what they could have achieved in linear existence. The vision shifted to show Earth and the Altarian homeworld as they existed in the successful timeline. Both planets had been transformed by technologies that seemed to blend matter and energy into new forms of existence. Cities floated in the atmosphere supported by crystalline structures that channeled cosmic energy. The people of both worlds worked together on projects that spanned solar systems. This future requires that you return home with specific knowledge, the entity continued. The war must end not with surrender but with genuine cooperation. The technologies we will share must be implemented jointly, with complete trust between your species. Dr. Vex raised a question that had been troubling them all. How do we know this isn't another test? Another manipulation designed to achieve some outcome you've predetermined? You don't know, the entity admitted with what might have been amusement. Free will exists even within our observations. Your choices remain your own, even when we can see the probable outcomes. What makes this timeline interesting is that your species have consistently chosen paths we did not expect. Captain Rodriguez, who had been quietly absorbing the experience, suddenly spoke up. What's the real reason you want our cooperation? What do you gain from our advancement? There was a pause that stretched across multiple dimensions before the entity responded. We are not the only intelligence operating on this scale. There are beings from realms beyond our own, who view developing civilizations as resources to be harvested. The more advanced species we can guide to transcendence, the stronger our collective defense against those who would consume rather than preserve consciousness. The revelation sent shockwaves through the crew's shared awareness. They were not just being tested for advancement, they were being recruited for a war on a cosmic scale. The choice is yours, the entity said as the vision began to fade. Return to your worlds with the knowledge we have shared. Work together to implement the technologies that will advance both your species and join the community of transcended civilizations. Or reject our guidance and face the future alone. What about our missing ships? Marcus asked. What happened to their crews? They became part of our observation matrix, their consciousness preserved while we studied their responses to dimensional displacement. They can be restored to normal spacetime if you choose to accept our offer. As the alien presence began to withdraw from their minds, Zara felt the weight of the decision before them. The future of both their civilizations depended on their ability to trust each other completely and work toward goals that would reshape their entire understanding of existence. The entity left them with one final message. You have 7 days to make your choice. We will monitor your decision, but we will not influence it. The path forward must be chosen freely, or the integration will fail. As normal consciousness returned to the crew of the Harmony, they found themselves alone in space with the debris of the lost ship slowly reforming around them, as if time itself was offering them a chance to undo the tragedies that had brought them to this moment. The real test was not their encounter with the architects, it was what they would do with the knowledge they had gained. The journey back to Altarian space passed in tense silence broken only by urgent planning sessions. The crew of the Harmony carried within their minds technologies that could revolutionize both civilizations, but implementing them would require a level of cooperation that seemed impossible given the mistrust built up over years of warfare. Zara found herself spending long hours with Marcus in the ship's observation lounge, trying to devise a strategy for presenting their discoveries to both governments. The weight of what they had learned pressed down on them like a physical burden. They held the keys to transcendence for their species, but only if they could convince leaders who had been enemies mere days ago to trust each other completely. My father will demand proof, Zara said as she reviewed the technical specifications the architects had implanted in their memories. The quantum resonance generators alone require resource sharing on a scale that would make our military completely dependent on human cooperation. Marcus nodded grimly. The Coalition Council isn't going to be much better. 3 years of war doesn't disappear overnight. Even with the promise of advanced technology, some of my own officers are already questioning whether the architect's offer is genuine or an elaborate Altarian deception. Dr. Kim looked up from her calculations at a nearby table. The mathematics check out, at least as far as our current understanding of physics allows. These technologies aren't impossible. They just require thinking about energy and matter in ways we never considered before. That's part of the problem, Captain Rodriguez added. We're asking people to abandon fundamental assumptions about how the universe works based on the word of beings we can't even properly perceive. Prince Dex, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since their encounter, finally spoke. What if we start small? Demonstrate the basic principles before attempting full integration? Zara turned to her brother with interest. What do you mean? The architects showed us how to create stable quantum tunnels between distant points, Dex explained. If we could establish instantaneous communication between our homeworlds, it would prove the technology works while building trust between our governments. Dr. Vex, the Altarian physicist, leaned forward eagerly. The prince has an excellent point. A successful demonstration of faster-than-light communication would be impossible to fake or explain away using existing technology. Marcus considered the suggestion. It would also require both governments to provide resources and research facilities without any guarantee of success. We're asking them to take a leap of faith. Not just faith, Zara corrected. We're asking them to bet the future of both species on our word that transcendent beings from another dimension want to help us evolve beyond physical existence. The stark reality of their situation settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Even if their governments agreed to cooperate, the technical challenges were enormous. The quantum resonance generators required exotic materials that existed only in the cores of certain types of stars. The consciousness integration matrices needed computing power that exceeded the combined capabilities of both civilizations. Every step toward transcendence would require trust, sacrifice, and innovations that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. As they approached Altarian space, long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements from both human and Altarian forces. Despite the ceasefire, both militaries remained on high alert, ready for hostilities to resume at any moment. Incoming transmission from the Imperial Fleet, Lieutenant Torres announced. Admiral Thorne requests immediate private communication with Princess Zara. The holographic image of the Admiral appeared in the center of the observation lounge. His expression was grim and he appeared to be speaking from a secure location, rather than a ship's bridge. Your Highness, thank the stars you're safe. The situation here has deteriorated significantly since your departure. Intelligence reports suggest human forces are massing near the Kepler system, and several radical factions within our own military are calling for preemptive strikes. Zara felt her heart sink. Admiral, have there been any actual hostile actions? Not yet, but tensions are rising by the hour. Some of our commanders believe your expedition was captured or destroyed by human forces. They're demanding proof of life before they'll honor the ceasefire agreement. Marcus stepped into view of the transmission. Admiral Thorne, this is Commander Chen. The Princess and your entire expedition crew are safe and unharmed. We've discovered information that changes everything about our understanding of the conflict between our species. The Admiral's expression hardened when he saw Marcus. Commander, while I appreciate your assurances, you'll understand if I require independent confirmation of our people's safety. Of course, Marcus replied without taking offense. We'll provide full medical scans and individual statements from every member of your crew. But Admiral, it's crucial that you understand. The war itself was artificially instigated by a third party. We have evidence that external forces manipulated both our governments to ensure conflict would occur. That's a serious accusation, Commander. What kind of evidence? Zara took over the explanation, knowing her word would carry more weight with the Admiral. We encountered the beings responsible for the manipulation. They confirmed that they caused the war as a test of both our species' capabilities. They offer advanced technologies and integration into a galactic community, but only if we can work together with complete cooperation. Admiral Thorne was quiet for several long moments. Your Highness, assuming what you say is accurate, what exactly are you proposing? A joint presentation to both governments simultaneously, Zara replied. Complete transparency about what we've learned, full disclosure of the technologies involved, and a mutual agreement to share resources in developing the capabilities we've been offered. The Emperor will never agree to that level of cooperation without guarantees that human forces won't use the arrangement to gain military advantages, the Admiral said bluntly. Marcus moved closer to the transmission device. Admiral, the technologies we're discussing transcend military applications. We're talking about the ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level, travel between dimensions, and integrate consciousness across space-time. Traditional concepts of military advantage become irrelevant at that scale. Perhaps, but convincing our respective governments will require more than promises. We need concrete demonstrations of good faith from both sides. Dr. Kim stepped forward with a suggestion. What if we offered to share the basic communication technology immediately? If we can establish instant quantum communication between your homeworlds, it would prove our claims while creating a foundation for larger cooperation. Admiral Thorne considered this. That might work, assuming the technology actually functions as you describe, but it would require both governments to agree to joint research facilities and shared technical teams. Then that's where we start, Zara said decisively. Admiral, can you arrange for my father to speak directly with the coalition leadership? We need to present this opportunity to both governments simultaneously, or the suspicion and mistrust will destroy our chances for cooperation. I can try, Your Highness, but the political situation is extremely delicate. Both sides have factions that want to resume hostilities. As the transmission ended, the crew of the Harmony faced the reality that their greatest challenge was not the advanced technology or the cosmic implications of their encounter. It was convincing their own people to abandon years of hatred in favor of an impossible-seeming future. The 7-day deadline the architects had given them was already half gone, and they hadn't even begun the real work of building the trust that transcendence would require. The joint assembly convened in neutral space aboard a massive diplomatic station that had been hastily constructed using both human and Altarian technologies. Representatives from both governments filled the circular amphitheater, their faces showing mixtures of curiosity, suspicion, and barely controlled hostility. The 3 days of negotiations required to arrange this meeting had nearly resulted in renewed warfare twice. Zara stood at the central podium alongside Marcus, acutely aware that the next few hours would determine the fate of both civilizations. Emperor Corvin sat with the Altarian delegation, his expression carefully neutral, while Coalition President Sarah Chen occupied the human section with equal diplomatic composure. The irony that she shared a surname with Marcus hadn't escaped anyone's notice. "Honored representatives of both our peoples," Zara began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "We gather here today to discuss revelations that will challenge everything we thought we knew about our conflict and our future." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Senator Harrison from the human delegation stood to interrupt. "Your Highness, with respect, we've agreed to this meeting under protest. Many of my constituents believe this is an elaborate ruse designed to gain strategic advantages for the Altarian Empire." General Vorthak, the Altarian military commander, responded immediately. "Senator Harrison, if anyone should be suspicious, it should be us. Your Commander Chen led the forces that devastated our outer colonies." Marcus stepped forward before the accusations could escalate. "General Vorthak, Senator Harrison, both of your concerns are understandable given our recent history. But what we discovered in the Vortha Nebula transcends our previous conflicts." The main display activated, showing recordings from their encounter with the architects. The assembly watched in stunned silence as the alien presence demonstrated its ability to manipulate reality itself. When the recording reached the point where multiple versions of the harmony existed simultaneously, several representatives stood in shock. "This is impossible," declared Dr. Elizabeth Kane, the Coalition's chief scientist. "The energy requirements for such manipulation would exceed the output of entire star systems." Dr. Vex rose from the Altarian section. "Honored colleagues, I've verified these recordings through every method available to our technology. They are genuine. We are dealing with beings whose capabilities exceed our understanding of physics." Emperor Corvin spoke for the first time since the assembly began. "Even assuming these recordings are authentic, why should we trust beings who admit to causing our war? They manipulated our governments into conflict that cost millions of lives." "Because, Father," Zara replied, "they offer us something beyond our current imagination, complete integration into a galactic community of transcended species. Technologies that would end scarcity, disease, and even death as we understand it." President Chen leaned forward. "At what cost?" "These architects admit they view us as subjects for experimentation. How do we know this offer isn't another test that we're destined to fail?" Marcus activated the second part of their presentation, showing the technical specifications the architects had implanted in their memories. "President Chen, the technologies they've shared require complete cooperation between our species. The quantum resonance generators need resources from both our territories. The consciousness integration matrices require computational power that can only be achieved by combining human and Altarian systems." "In other words," Senator Harrison said sarcastically, "they're forcing us to work together whether we want to or not." "Yes," Dr. Kim confirmed, stepping up to the podium. "But the alternative is facing threats from other cosmic intelligences without any protection. The architects warned us about beings who harvest developing civilizations rather than preserving them." A new voice spoke from the assembly. Commander James Walsh, a veteran human officer, stood slowly. "I fought against Altarian forces for 3 years. I lost friends, colleagues, people I considered family. You're asking me to trust the same species that killed them, based on the word of aliens we can't even properly perceive." Silence fell over the assembly as the raw emotion behind Walsh's words resonated with representatives from both sides. Every person present had been touched by the war's devastation. Prince Dex surprised everyone by responding first. "Commander Walsh, I understand your pain. But if the architects are truthful, then every person who died in our war was a victim of manipulation by beings we never knew existed. Our choice now is whether their deaths will have meaning through our cooperation, or whether we'll honor their memory through continued hatred." "The prince speaks wisdom," said General Kara Thorne, Admiral Thorne's daughter and a decorated war veteran herself. "But wisdom doesn't erase 3 years of blood and suffering. How do we build trust with people we've been trained to see as enemies?" Zara looked around the assembly, seeing the same struggle in every face. Fear, hope, anger, and longing warred in their expressions. These people wanted to believe in a better future, but the wounds of war ran too deep for easy healing. "General Thorne," Zara said, "you ask how we build trust with former enemies. The answer is simple. We start by choosing to trust each other right now in this moment with something small." She activated a small device that Dr. Kim and Dr. Vex had constructed during their journey home. It was a basic quantum communicator, using the simplest principles the architects had shared with them. This device will establish instantaneous communication with our homeworlds, Zara explained. It requires both human and Altarian technical knowledge to function. If it works, it proves that cooperation between our species can achieve the impossible. If it fails, then we know the architect's promises are false. Marcus took his position at the human interface while Zara moved to the Altarian controls. The device links our quantum signature matrices to create a stable tunnel through dimensional space. Success requires perfect synchronization between our technologies. On my mark, Zara said, her hand hovering over the activation switch. 3, 2, 1, now! Both ambassadors activated their interfaces simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air in the center of the assembly shimmered, and holographic images of Earth and the Altarian homeworld appeared side by side. The representatives could see real-time images of their home cities, with people going about their daily lives completely unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding in the diplomatic station. Impossible, whispered Dr. Kane. The quantum entanglement required for this would take decades to establish using our current technology. And yet here it is, Dr. Vex replied with wonder, functioning exactly as the architects described. The successful demonstration created a shift in the assembly's atmosphere. The impossible had become reality before their eyes, and with it came the recognition that everything else the architects had promised might also be achievable. President Chen stood slowly. If we agree to pursue this cooperation, what guarantees do we have that one side won't try to dominate the other once we've shared our most advanced technologies? Emperor Corvin rose to face the human president. President Chen, the technologies we're discussing make traditional concepts of domination irrelevant. Beings who can manipulate matter at the quantum level and travel between dimensions have no need for territorial conquest. Then you're willing to proceed with full cooperation? President Chen asked. I am willing to try, the Emperor replied. For the sake of our people and the possibility of a future neither of us can fully imagine. The Assembly voted by acclamation to accept the architect's offer and begin immediate cooperation on developing the shared technologies. As representatives from both sides began working together to plan the massive undertaking ahead, Zara realized that the hardest part wasn't the advanced technology or the cosmic implications. The hardest part was learning to see their former enemies as partners in transcendence, but as she watched Marcus coordinating with Altarian engineers and her father discussing resource allocation with human administrators, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, both species were ready for evolution beyond anything they had previously imagined.